With DreamWorks Animation just releasing How to Train Your Dragon 3, DreamWorks Animation now has 36 films in their category, so we're going to rank these movies from worst to best. Let's get started. Hey everybody, my name is Justin. I love to watch movies, and if you guys love to watch movies too, you guys are in the right place. Make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. Today we're going to be talking about DreamWorks Animation. We're going to be ranking their movies from worst to best. So disclaimer real quick, we're not going to include their direct-to-home video feature back in early 2000. We're only going to be including movies that were released in theaters. There's 36 of them. They've had a roller coaster of a career. Some are really good, some are pretty bad, some have really bad 3D gimmicks. But whatever you may say about DreamWorks Animation, they do have some really good films, and I'm excited to talk about all of their movies from worst to best. This is going to be a lengthy video, so stick with me and make sure to leave your thoughts down below and how you would rank all 36 of these films. So sit down, get some popcorn, and let's get started with number 36, Shark Tale. Shark Tale is one of my least favorite animation movies and the worst DreamWorks Animation movie. I have seen this movie once when it was released and then once when I just rewatched it, and I was reminded of how bad this movie is. The storyline is so thin, it feels a lot like Finding Nemo, this underwater world, and the story just did not catch me by surprise. We have some pretty good voice acting in here. Will Smith, Jack Black, and we even have Martin Scorsese with his iconic bushy eyebrows. This movie is filled with underwater gangsters, groupies, and graffiti artists. And I do gotta say the musical number in here is pretty good, but this movie is just, it's boring, the storyline is very thin, and it's not very funny. Coming at number 35 is B movie. This is more like an F movie. This is one of the worst movies that DreamWorks Animation has created. Like years after the fame of Jerry Seinfeld, he comes back to do an animated movie about a bee who falls in love with a human. That's like against the laws of nature right there, and it's not very funny. It's a very odd story that I just could not get behind. I don't really want to feel invested in a story about a small little bee that falls in love with a human, and she's just kind of throwing those feelings right back at him. So just the story alone is very odd and makes me not want to watch it. Paired that with this movie is not very funny. The animation is okay, but Jerry Seinfeld is not someone that I would want to be drawn to see an animated movie from. When I hear a movie about a bee voiced by Jerry Seinfeld, it's not something I want to flock to the theaters and go see. This movie is just bad. Coming at number 34 is Home. Now this movie does have some adorable character designs. It's very vibrant, but the narrative for this film is very bland. It struggles to stay interesting from beginning to end. It's a very forgettable film. I saw this movie in theaters once it was released, and I do think that the voice casting is pretty good in here from Sheldon Cooper, and I do think that there is some adorable fun moments, but overall this movie is just bland. The message that they were trying to give to young audience members just came off very forced at times. It's not a film that I want to see again. And when I used to work at a daycare and we would play this movie, many of the kids want to go do something else, like not watch this movie at all. Coming at number 33 is Boss Baby. I've actually met the director for this movie, and I saw this at a premiere, and it's a really inconsistent movie with its animation. Sometimes it throws back to old style animation, and sometimes it tries to be very new. It doesn't really know what it wants to be. And a movie with a baby, you would expect some potty humor, but for DreamWorks Animation, there is a lot of potty humor in here. I do like the voice acting. I think it's a clever choice to have an older man voice a baby. I think it's pretty funny. But the story is charmless. I don't really care about what is going on, the relationship between this young baby and this boy, and how they are trying to, work together to figure things out. I don't really get invested in the storyline, so it's a really boring storyline. This movie is zany, it's off-putting, and it just never really works. Coming in at number 32 is Shrek Forever After, the fourth Shrek film. And by the fourth time in this franchise, it's lost all its charm. It's lost everything that I loved about Shrek. The action feels overused. The relationships aren't as strong as the first time I seen them. The characters are still fun to watch. I still admire seeing Shrek and Donkey. I just don't feel that love for them like the first time I saw them. Shrek is hitting a midlife crisis very early on in his life, and it's an odd story to present to kids about this man who doesn't want to take care of his babies. He wants to be away from his wife. I don't think kids can relate to this movie, and I don't think that parents want to sit and watch a movie about an ogre having a midlife crisis. So that alone is an odd story to present to kids. It's also not very funny. It's a weird story. It just feels used and the charm is all gone. I love Shrek. I think it's one of the most iconic animation movies of all time. But by the fourth time, I don't really care about the characters as much as I used to. And that's a shame, because you're going to see where Shrek and Shrek 2 play in this list. But Shrek 4, it just feels overused. They've done this thing over and over again. And I really don't care what happens with Shrek and his life. Coming at number 31 is Sinbad, voiced by Brad Pitt. I think he does a great job of voicing this character, but this movie definitely feels borrowed from Disney movies like Aladdin. It's a fun story. I like the idea for the story, but it definitely feels lackluster for what they are presenting to me. It's a story that could have gone in a different route and been a really upbeat movie, but what they gave me was something that was not very exciting, not very memorable. I saw this when I was younger, and obviously I rewatched it for this ranking video, but you know, when I watched it, there was certain things I couldn't remember as a kid. And I used to watch like a lot of animation movies as a kid, and I used to watch some over and over again. And I finally watched this movie once, and I owned it as a kid. What does that say about this movie that I didn't want to watch it again and again? I watched it once and I was done with it, because it's a very lackluster movie that's not exciting. It does have some good voice acting in here, but overall it feels borrowed from Disney themes, and it's just a pretty boring movie. Coming at number 30 is The Road to El Dorado. They are trying to stick to hand-drawn animation at this point, which was weird because Antz was not hand-drawn animation, but The Road to El Dorado is a movie like Sinbad, very forgettable. It does have some entertaining moments throughout the movie, but not enough to keep me interested. The storyline works, the character relationships do work, the animation looks pretty good, and the voice cast is impressive, but like I said, the movie doesn't keep me interested throughout. There's a few scenes here and there, but I feel like a lot of the scenes drag in this movie, and they don't keep my interest throughout. Coming in at number 29 is Shrek 3, and this is a really disappointing movie. I remember being really hyped for this movie once it was released. I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, so I bought it on DVD, and I think it came out around Christmas time, so I got it as a gift. And I was truly excited to sit down and watch Shrek 3 because I love Shrek and Shrek 2. And what I got was another odd story that Shrek just feels like he's done with a lot of things. It's amusing the first couple times where he doesn't want to give like everything is all. He just gives like the minimal effort to a lot of things. And the storyline just feels like used at this point in his life. He doesn't want to be the king, so he tries to find the next person in line, and that's Justin Timberlake's character. And that whole story of him just being like done with a lot of stuff just feels overused. The story is not as strong as the first two. It's not as charming as the first two. The characters don't feel as strong as the first two, and that's just disappointing because they took some really interesting characters and they really just made them boring. Coming at number 28 is Mr. Peabody and Sherman. I was really excited to see this movie. I've seen a few of the cartoons back in the day, but this movie just feels very fastly paced. They're trying to throw so many different historical moments in here that none of them really feel like as strong as they could be. They're taking some really important parts in history and they're just giving us the brief moments for us to not really care about. They just kind of introduce so many different things, and they try to put it all together at the end, and the characters just don't feel as strong as they should have. Coming at number 27 is Monsters vs. Aliens. I think this is a great homage to 50s sci-fi horror films. A good cast in here with different characters. We have like Seth Rogen playing a blob, which I think is pretty funny. There's just a wide variety of different characters to enjoy and a good voice cast to back that up. The 3D does feel a little unnecessary. The story drags at time. It's not a movie that is memorable and movie that I want to watch over and over again. I think I like this movie just for the characters and the voice cast, not so much of the story and the themes and character relationships. I think I just liked it for the designs and how this movie looked. Coming at number 26 is Spirit. Now, I got this movie as a gift when I was younger, and I just did not have any interest in watching a movie about a horse. So I put it off for years. I felt bad about it. It always just sat there glaring at me, and I never really wanted to watch it. And then it was in high school where I just sat down and watched it. I was like on a binge of just watching random movies, and I watched it, and I understand why I didn't want to watch it. This movie bores me to death. It's not a very exciting movie in my eyes. I know that some people really do like it, but this movie is beautiful to look at. I love how this movie looks, and I think the voice cast is good, but when it comes down to it, it's not a very exciting movie. It's more of a tame animation movie for kids. There's nothing that's really like crazy and upbeat and fun, but I do think that it is a beautiful film to look at. The voice acting is good, but it's just a dull movie for me. Coming at number 25 is Rise of the Guardians. This is like, you take all of the legends like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and you make an Avengers movie. It's a really fun, energetic movie. I like the different characters, but unfortunately there's a lot of these characters that are really cool, but they're trying to fight for screen time. So you feel like Chris Pine's character is like the main star, and you get a lot of attention on this guy, but you really don't get to know much of the other characters, which is disappointing because I think a lot of them were really cool looking. I wanted to know more of them, but we just don't get that. Coming at number 24 is Turbo. This is a very predictable movie. It's a story that I feel like has been told many times, but what glues this movie together is the animation and the voice cast. There are so many great people behind scenes working on this movie. Bill Hader, Ryan Reynolds, Samuel Jackson, Snoop Dogg, Paul Giamatti. There's so many different people on this movie. And Ryan Reynolds is like the perfect pick to voice your character. Detective Pikachu's coming up. Great choice. Great as Deadpool. And I liked him in this role. So there's a lot of energy flowing through this movie, and that's provided by the voice cast. There are a few laughs here and there. It's a cute movie, but it's a very predictable movie where you know what's going to happen at the end. It's a story that's been told many times. Coming at number 23 is Flushed Away. This is a claymation movie, and I think that a lot of this British humor flows. It's really funny. I like British humor. I think it's really funny. This movie is just clever. The characters are really funny. And for a movie that talks about flushing things away, there's surprisingly not that much potty humor in this movie, which was surprising for me. So this is a movie I used to watch a lot when it was released. I want to say 2006. I could be wrong. But I do remember watching it plenty of times and thinking that the characters were funny. I liked the story. It was a fun, upbeat movie that had a lot of humor in it that definitely worked. I remember laughing a lot, and I think 2006, I was in 8th grade, so I was in junior high at the time that this was released, but I do remember watching a lot of Flushed Away. Coming at number 22 is The Croods. Now, I like the idea for this movie. I think it's a really clever movie that I liked watching when I first saw it. And I watched it a few times after that, and this movie is very zany, it's very upbeat, it's very comical, and there's a lot of slapstick humor. It almost feels like a bunch of different shorts in one. You know, you watch all these Looney Tunes and they have the story, but then they have like all these little, you know, zany slapstick humor things going on, these little skits. I feel like that's The Croods. There's a lot of different things going on. It's really fast paced. They're having a lot of fun with it. They're just goofing off. And I feel like It's just a bunch of different things all in one. The story is not as strong as I could hope for, but Nicolas Cage voicing a prehistoric father, I'll take that. I'll laugh any day. Coming at number 21 is Trolls. Now, when I first saw this, I was like, that's an okay movie. And the more I watched it, the more I appreciated this film. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it is a very vibrant, very fun, very catchy movie that I found myself wanting to go back to multiple times in watching this movie. Like I said, that has to do with the color, the music, the different kind of characters. You have one that's really upbeat, poppy, voiced by Anna Kendrick. She's just all about glitter and love and happiness. And then you have a polar opposite character named Branch, voiced by Justin Timberlake, who's gray, he's sad, depressed all the time. And I love the journey of having him trying to become happy. I think it's some sweet character development. So I like that there's two different kind of characters that maybe kids can relate to, and realize that everybody is not as happy as they are. Some people might be sad sometimes, and they have a reasoning for that. And we got to be there to make them feel happy. And so I like that there's two different characters in this movie. And the use of the songs in here are great, from Justin Timberlake's very popular song and Anna Kendrick singing as well. This movie is enjoyable. It's funny. I like it. It's a very upbeat movie that I wanted to watch over and over again just because it made me feel happy and I liked looking at the colors. Coming in number 20 is Wallace and Gromit. Now, this is a good-hearted movie. I think that this movie has some really good intentions. The humor is there, more of that British style of humor. Definitely have some likable characters in here. This is a movie that I'm not sure, I can't really remember when this movie did come out, but I do remember having a poster for it, and I do remember buying the DVD and watching it a few times. And since then, I've grown to appreciate this movie. Like I said, I really enjoy the characters. I like watching this movie and learning about the characters and the world that is built in this movie. It's a whimsical, very zany style of humor, but it's a movie that I constantly smile throughout and have a good time watching. Coming at number 19 is Antz. Now, Antz is the first Dreamworks animated movie that they have done. Antz has a huge voice cast in here. You have Woody Allen, Sylvester Stallone is in this movie, and I was going through all these movies, and Antz was the first one that I watched in preparation for this ranking video, and I just found it to be a kind of a slow movie. Now, I do think that the animation is good for its time. Obviously, we've vastly improved throughout the years. But as a story, it's not one that I was truly excited about watching. I remember owning the VHS when I was younger, watching it once, never watching it again, and then watching it again for this ranking video, and I just thought that this movie it's really slow. It's a really slow pace to it, whereas Bug's Life was kind of, quicker paced, and they had all these different zany little characters. Antz doesn't offer many too exciting moments. It's a lot of dialogue, a lot of character build-up, relationships, character growth, but there isn't too much to keep me interested in. Now, the characters are cool. The characters' voice cast provides a lot of fun moments. The character voice cast is great, but I wanted to have a story that I could get behind, I could get interested in, but for the time that it's released, I think that the animation worked. Like I said, we improved, but I would like to see more of a story. Coming in at number 18 is Chicken Run. Now, Chicken Run is a surprisingly very suspenseful movie about chickens. I never thought I would say that, a suspenseful chicken movie, but I think that Chicken Run is a fun, upbeat movie. It's a very absurd movie that I like watching here and there. I didn't see it when it was first released. A lot of these movies on this list took me many years to watch. And when I did watch Chicken Run, I sat down and I enjoyed myself. It's a weird thriller with claymation, and we have some really fun characters, some really funny moments. The absurdity in this movie definitely shines, but I think it's a very enjoyable film. Coming in number 17 is Megamind. When this was first released, I was all about Megamind. I love Will Ferrell, and he does a great job voicing this villain. And we have Brad Pitt voicing the superhero. The voice cast just works in here, and that's what makes this movie a lot of fun, is definitely the voice cast. We have Megamind, who is a really over-the-top villain. The character design is weird, but Will Ferrell definitely gives this movie an extra edge to it. Where the story is something we've seen before. We have a typical backstory for like this villain, but what makes this movie really energetic is the voice cast. You can tell that they have a lot of fun voicing these characters, and the animation pops. It's very bright. I think it's a very enjoyable film with a lot of great action scenes. The narrative is very typical, but it's carried by the voice cast. Coming number 16 is The Prince of Egypt. This has a really astounding chariot scene that is similar to Ben-Hur. This is one of their more serious movies. I remember getting this for Easter many years ago and watching it and being interested in this story. This is more of a humane story with not a lot of fantasy elements going for it. No dragons and ogres and trolls. This is more of a serious movie, and it definitely works. I think there's a lot of time focusing on the story, the characters. I found this movie to be very interesting. It's a biblical movie, and I'm not too huge on these kinds of movies because I'm not religious at all. But I did find this movie to be pretty interesting, and I wanted to watch it again. And it's a movie that when my friends wanted to watch some these fun, upbeat movies, at times I just wanted to watch The Prince of Egypt, and I think that had to do with the tone and the the character development, and the animation was great. There's just so many things that I did appreciate about this movie. Coming at number 15 is Captain Underpants. I read all of the Captain Underpants books as a kid, and I thought this movie was really true to the novels that I read as a kid. The Captain Underpants character is really weird, over the top, and these two young kids can control their principal and turn him into the superhero with no powers, Captain Underpants. Now, I think the voice cast is perfect. When I imagine these characters, the voice cast definitely works. The two young boys, really great relationship. They feel like friends. I loved reading their stories that they created with inside the Captain Underpants books as a kid, and I loved reading them, and I loved seeing them play out in this movie. So I do think that the movie did a great job of building these characters up and the relationship as well. Then you have Captain Underpants, who's a lot of fun in this movie. You can tell that they had a blast controlling their principal whenever they wanted, and it led to a really fun ending with Nick Kroll voicing Professor Poopy Pants. That was one of my favorite villains in the books, and I think that he was really well realized, and Nick Kroll does a great job voicing this character. So there's a lot of things I did love about Captain Underpants. A lot of fun moments in here, a lot of things that definitely did work, and I wish that they would do another one. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Coming number 14 is Puss in Boots. They took the character from Shrek, they made him his own movie. It's a lot of fun. You also have Zach Galifianakis voicing an egg. Definitely works. Puss in Boots is a really interesting character from Shrek. I wanted to know more about him. Antonio Banderas does a great job voicing this character. There's surprisingly a lot of great one-liners from little cats in here that I remember quoting from many months after this movie. A lot of great action scenes. Puss in Boots was really well realized in this movie. Had a lot of great character development, surprisingly, and his relationships with other characters definitely work. The animation worked. It was a lot of fun. I remember this movie being very upbeat, very funny, and I definitely enjoyed this movie. This video is so long that I had to stop because I ran out of time on my camera, and I realized I have snot on one of my sides of my shirt for my child. Part of being a parent. Alright, number 13, Over the Hedge. I thought this movie is a blast. This is one of my favorite movies to rewatch, and a lot of the characters are just out of control. Steve Carell's squirrel is one of the coolest Dreamworks characters that I have seen. This deals a lot with consumerism, capitalism, consumption, and the three C's, and we get a lot of that theme in this movie. And I feel like it's got a nice tone to it with its theme. It's not like it's not a heavy-handed theme, which I was okay with. But I like the characters. I like them trying to problem solve. I like them working together. A lot of the characters are just a blast to watch. They got some really good voice casts in here. Bruce Willis is in here, as well as Steve Carell, and I think Wanda Sykes is in here as well. So there's a lot of upbeat moments in here. A lot of times you feel like they don't work well as a group, especially with Bruce Willis's character. And then they come together to work as a group. And I think that it's really sweet. I love watching this movie. It's one movie that I wish they would release on Blu-ray. I don't think that it is on Blu-ray last time that I checked. I haven't bought a Blu-ray since The Greatest Showman back in April of last year. So I don't know what's been released on Blu-ray since then, but I would love to see Over the Hedge on Blu-ray, and I would like to own it. It's a really fun movie that I watched a lot when it was first released. And Steve Carell's character is just one of my favorite characters of all the DreamWorks movies. Coming in at number 12 is Kung Fu Panda 2. This is a worthy sequel to the first Kung Fu Panda movie. Some great action scenes in here. Po is still learning new things, which I do appreciate. It manages to keep it fresh and manages to still maintain the humor and the heart from the first movie. Po has found a lot of confidence in himself, which is always great to see in a character like this. The action scenes are great. The villain is a lot of fun. It definitely pits Po against someone that is stronger than he is. And the first movie as well, or even the third movie, they always put him against someone that is way stronger than he is. And it's always this nice, underdog story from the Kung Fu Panda series. But Kung Fu Panda 2 still managed to maintain the humor, the silliness from Po, but also managed to keep it fresh and adding something new to the story. Coming at number 11 is Penguins of Madagascar. Now I know not a lot of people like this movie. It took the best things from the Madagascar series and just ran with it and had the characters with their own movies. The humor is still there. You get to see a lot of them. There is some narrative issues. Some of the other characters don't feel the same in regards to like the animation from the penguins. I do like Dave giving nicknames to his henchmen and having the different names like Nicolas Cage and Charlize Theron. That's fun, and I always like pointing those out when I watch it. The reason I think it's so high for me is I've seen it so many times. My wife and I, on our very first date, we went to get some Italian food, and then we saw Penguins of Madagascar when it was released. I think we saw it in December of 2014. So that was our first date anniversary, and so I want to say December 19th is when our first date was. We watched it every December 19th. So I watched it 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. I've watched it about 5 times, and I think I watched it on Blu-ray, so probably like 6 or 7 times I've seen this film. I've seen this film plenty of times, and I enjoy this film. I think it's because I've seen it so much, but I enjoy the penguins. I think they're hilarious. They take control of the movie, and they just kind of run with it, and it's a lot of fun. The jokes work. The narrative is a bit bland, and it's kind of overstretched and overstayed its welcome. I love this movie because I laugh a lot, and it brings fond memories of when my wife and I first started dating. So it's a movie that I do love to watch. Coming in at number 10 is Madagascar 3. I have a soft spot for the Madagascar series. I do enjoy the characters and story, the overall tone, and silliness from these movies. And the third movie does feel overused, and but it still manages to keep the same characters from the first and second movie. They still have great relationships. Their jokes are intact. It's a storyline that I just really didn't buy into, but I do love watching these characters. These are some of my favorite DreamWorks animation characters, and they're on the big screen once again in a really zany, over-the-top, crazy movie that sometimes doesn't work, sometimes it does work, but the relationships are still there, and I still laugh at this movie. Coming at number 9 is Kung Fu Panda. This movie took me many years to appreciate this movie because the first time I saw it, I hated it. I did not like this movie at all. And then I constantly watched this because we had this movie at the daycare that I used to work at, and it was on like every Friday evening as we were cleaning up the daycare. We used to watch Kung Fu Panda. And so I grown to appreciate the movie, and I do like the character of Po. A really underdog story about a panda that is really fat and doesn't have the abilities that some of the other characters do, and so he has to learn a lot of things. And I think there's some really good character development. He's finding confidence in himself. He's really happy with how he turns out, and he believes in himself towards the end. It's a really good journey with some really great action scenes. The comedy from Jack Black definitely works, and it is a overall fun film. Coming in number 8 is Madagascar 2. I appreciate the story for Alex's point of view. They really do feel distant. The whole group feels distant in this movie. Alex is trying to learn more about himself. He's discovered his family, where the other 3 characters are off doing their own thing. So the group really does feel distant, and that's one of an issue for me, is I would like them all together. But when we do get them together, and the penguins and all the different little characters, they're still fun to watch. It's a story that feels similar to like The Lion King. We have someone that would like to take over, and now Alex is returning, so he thinks that Alex shouldn't be king. But I like the journey of the story. I like the progression, and out of all 3 of them, this is the one I've seen the least. Coming in number 7 is Kung Fu Panda 3. This is my favorite Kung Fu Panda movie. Very emotional, and I like this movie because it still manages to add something new to it. By the 3rd movie, you expect that it's kind of overstayed its welcome. Look at the Shrek movie, the 3rd one. I really didn't like that one. But Kung Fu Panda 3 added something new. More pandas. Po had recently just discovered his real family, and we have Bryan Cranston voicing the dad, which is perfect. But Po is still managing to learn new abilities. He's always wanting to learn something new, and he uses it for his advantage against the villain. And so I like that he's discovering new powers. It's not using the same things over and over again. He has to master something new. And when you're learning Kung Fu or Taekwondo or whatever it may be, you're always getting something new thrown at you. And I like this element in here in Kung Fu Panda 3, that he has to learn something new. And then we also get the introduction of the new pandas, the new family. So there's a lot of different things in this movie. I think it's emotional, it's a lot of fun, the action scenes still work, and the humor is still intact. Coming at number 6 is Madagascar. When we were introduced to these characters, I instantly fell in love with them. We have Ben Stiller, Chris Rock, Jada Pinkett Smith, David Schwimmer, Sacha Baron Cohen, and just a bunch of different people in here. And each one plays to their character very well. Just a wide variety of different characters with different emotions, different fears, and each one is special in their own way. But when they get them together in a group, they work, and they're really hilarious. I like the story. I like them going back to where they belong, but they're also trying to adapt to that because they are used to the human lifestyle. They are on Madagascar, and they have to learn to be in the jungle. And I think it's a lot of fun watching these characters adapt. It's a hilarious movie. And that song, I Like to Move It, has stuck in my head for all these years. I still randomly sing it here and there. Alright guys, we're getting into the top 5 now. If you notice, I haven't talked about one franchise out of here, and that's How to Train Your Dragon. Coming in number 5 is How to Train Your Dragon 2. By the 2nd movie, the characters are just so well written, the relationships are so strong, and they are built up nicely in the 1st movie, and in the 2nd movie, they just really do shine. I love the relationship. It is heartwarming, very sweet, surprisingly very realistic for a human and a dragon together, but I like that they're all together now. In the 1st movie, they didn't want dragons in their world. Now there is dragons in their world, and I like watching how dragons and humans coexist and live in one place. And so we have that, and then we have the introduction of Hiccup's mom, and new dragons, new threats, different things. This movie is still managed to be very heartwarming, emotional, funny, thrilling. There's a lot of different elements in this movie that do work and bring it together for one amazing sequel. Coming in number 4 is the most recent DreamWorks animation movie, How to Train Your Dragon 3. If you haven't checked out my review for that, make sure to check it out right up here. This was an emotional movie that I almost cried at. The characters do feel distant, but they still have a really strong relationship. Toothless is just recently discovered this light fury, and he's madly in love and he wants to flirt with her, and those moments are endearing. They're really sweet. And then we had Hiccup, who's trying to find this hidden world because this guy wants to kill all of the night furies, so he has to protect Toothless and go to this hidden world. So he's trying to discover that as well. So they're off doing their own things. Relationships do feel distant, but yet very strong. This movie is a lot of fun. It's very sweet. It's emotional. If you have not seen it, definitely check it out. It is one of the best ends of the trilogies that I have seen in a long time. It's everything you could expect for a How to Train Your Dragon movie. Coming in at number 3 is Shrek 2. Now, I know this movie would be lower on people's list. The movie is not as charming as the first one, but I still managed to love Shrek 2. They are now visiting Fiona's family, so Shrek has to impress the father and mother, who are humans, not ogres like Fiona is. But you know, Fiona was a human before she was an ogre. He's like a fish out of water, so those elements really do work. Donkey is great in here once again. We get the introduction of Puss in Boots, who is so funny, voiced by Antonio Banderas, who went on to have his own movie, and so the introduction of him into the group surprisingly feels very normal. When I think of Shrek, I think of Puss in Boots and Donkey together. It worked that well. The previous characters are still likable. The new characters are a lot of fun. The fairy godmother, the prince, they're all hilarious. We get to see them a lot more later down the road, but the main characters are still lovable, still charming, but that didn't work for the third movie. Coming in at number 2 is How to Train Your Dragon. This movie did a great job of handling the relationships, starting off slow. You know, they were kind of distant. They didn't know what to do. Hiccup was trying to help Toothless. Toothless didn't know how to kind of handle that. So they did a great job of making these characters work for it. We had to work towards this relationship. It wasn't something that was going to happen overnight. They had to build that up, and this writing for this movie is outstanding. How they handled the progression of these two characters, because in the second and third movie, it's beautiful. I love their relationships. And my favorite thing about How to Train Your Dragon is the understanding of the dragon and the humans, and how a lot of the humans are against the dragons, but it was up to Hiccup to try to convince his family and friends and everybody that dragons are okay and they're not going to hurt you. So this movie it's amazing. I love the animation, the action scenes, the emotional moments. It's a lot of fun. I remember seeing it in theater, not expecting much from it, but I left that theater thinking, wow, this is one of the best animated movies I have ever seen, and I can't wait for more. And we got the second and third one, which are great films. But my favorite DreamWorks animation movie is Shrek. Shrek is not only my favorite DreamWorks animation movie, it is one of the most iconic and well-loved animation movies of all time for me. Shrek is such a likable character, yet he hates a lot of things. Almost is like a relatable character for a lot of people, and there's so many different little side things going on. We have Donkey, voiced by Eddie Murphy, which is one of the best voice casting ever. Fiona, and then we had Lord Farquaad, and all the little different fairy tale creatures in here, and all these different one-liners. Shrek on his journey to bring Fiona to Lord Farquaad is a great fun journey. Shrek is just a really great character, and his relationship with Donkey, he didn't really want, but we got it, and it's one of the best pairings ever. You think of pairings for like animated movies, you got Buzz and Woody, and then you got Donkey and Shrek. They're very iconic, and it works in here. Two completely different characters, but yet they really understand each other towards the end of the film, and it's a blast. I could sit here and talk about how much I love Shrek, and you've probably heard how Shrek is a great film, but it stands as my number 1. Thank you guys for sticking with me throughout this video. Make sure to comment down below with your ranking video and check out some other ranking videos right over here. Make sure to check out How to Train Your Dragon 3 in theaters coming up very soon. My name is Just Watch Movies, and you stay classy, YouTube.